a nation of sheep will beget a government of wolves. We cannot defend freedom abroad by deserting it at home. We must not confuse dissent with disloyalty. We must remember always that accusation is not proof and that conviction depends upon evidence and due process of law. We will not walk in fear one of another. We will not be driven by fear into an age of unreason if we dig deep in our history and our doctrine and remember that we are not descended from fearful men, not from men who feared to write, to speak, to associate, and to defend causes that were, for the moment, unpopular. We must not confuse dissent with disloyalty. When the loyal opposition dies, I think the soul of America dies with it. Our major obligation is not to mistake slogans for solutions. Anyone who isn't confused really doesn't understand the situation. Everyone is a prisoner of his own experiences. No one can eliminate prejudices, just recognize them. A great many people think they are thinking when they are really rearranging their prejudices. To be persuasive, we must be believable. To be believable, we must be credible. To be credible, we must be truthful. No one can terrorize a whole nation unless we are all his accomplices. The speed of communications is wondrous to behold. It is also true that speed can multiply the distribution of information that we know to be untrue. We have currently a built-in allergy to unpleasant or disturbing information. Our mass media reflect this. But unless we get up off our fat surpluses and recognize that television in the main is being used to distract, delude, amuse, and insulate us, then television and those who finance it, those who look at it, and those who work at it may see a totally different picture too late. Just because your voice reaches halfway around the world doesn't mean you are wiser than when it reached only to the end of the bar. No one man can terrorize a whole nation unless we are all his accomplices. Difficulty is the excuse history never accepts. The obscure we see eventually. The completely obvious, it seems, takes longer. Most truths are so naked that people feel sorry for them and cover them up, at least a little bit. Just because your voice reaches halfway around the world doesn't mean you are any wiser than when it reached only to the end of the bar. To be persuasive, we must be believable. To be believable, we must be creditable. To be credible, we must be truthful. We will not walk in fear one of another. We will not be driven by fear into an age of unreason if we dig deep in our own history and our doctrine and remember that we are not descended from fearful men. Not from men who feared to write, to speak, to associate, and to defend causes that were, for the moment, unpopular. There is no way for a citizen of the Republic to abdicate his responsibility. If we were to do the second coming of Christ in color for a full hour, there would be a considerable number of stations which would decline to carry it on the grounds that a Western or a quiz show would be more profitable. We are in the same tent as the clowns and the freaks that's show business. When the politicians complain that TV turns the proceedings into a circus, it should be made clear that the circus was already there, and that TV has merely demonstrated that not all the performers are well trained. A nation of sheep will beget a government of wolves. The right of dissent, or, if you prefer, the right to be wrong, is surely fundamental to the existence of a democratic society. That's the right that went first in every nation that stumbled down the trail toward totalitarianism. The newest computer can merely compound, at speed, the oldest problem in the relations between human beings. And in the end, the communicator will be confronted with the old problem of what to say and how to say it. I simply cannot accept that there are, on every story, two equal and logical sides to an argument. It is almost impossible to substitute intelligence for experience. People say conversation is a lost art. How often I have wished it were. I began by saying that our history will be what we make it. If we go on as we are, then history will take its revenge, and retribution will not limp in catching up with us. We are to a large extent an imitative society. If one or two or three corporations would undertake to devote just a small fraction of their advertising appropriation along the lines that I have suggested, the procedure would grow by contagion. The economic burden would be bearable, and there might ensue a most exciting adventure exposure to ideas and the bringing of reality into the homes of the nation. To those who say people wouldn't look, they wouldn't be interested. They're too complacent, indifferent, and insulated. I can only reply, there is, in one reporter's opinion, considerable evidence against that contention. But even if they are right, what have they got to lose? Because if they are right, and this instrument is good for nothing but to entertain, amuse, and insulate, then the tube is flickering now, and we will soon see that the whole struggle is lost. This instrument can teach, it can illuminate, yes, and it can even inspire. But it can do so only to the extent that humans are determined to use it to those ends. Otherwise, it is merely wires and lights in a box. There is a great and perhaps decisive battle to be fought against ignorance, intolerance, and indifference.